Welcome to Thursday Night Footy on Fox. Thanks to McCain, it is crunch time for Port Adelaide and Ken Hinkley up against the might of the reigning Premier Melbourne. A big welcome to Jason Dunstall, Lee Montagna and Jordan Lewis. Guys, this is high-stakes footy tonight. The pressure is on. This is when it gets fun.
It is, and I've got a gut feeling, Sarah. It's a big gut, so it's a strong feeling. I just get the impression that we might get a lot more of a contest than what people are thinking.
Well, Melbourne,
how's your gut?
Well, my gut's just progressive. Not getting too far. But no, look, I think Melbourne, they've been challenged all three games so far this season, but like a good side, they keep finding a way to win. I expect something similar tonight. Yeah,
I think reigning premiers coming up against a side in Port Adelaide who are backs against the wall. It's a tough task for them to go over there and win on their home deck. So, so much to play for Port Adelaide. I'm interested to see how the first quarter starts.
They do play Adelaide Oval particularly well, Melbourne. We know they requested to play the Brisbane Lions there in the finals last year. They've won 5 of their last 6, so the advantage actually maybe isn't as strong as we think.
It's a great surface. It's a fast surface, and they're very comfortable. When you've got a good team, you don't mind playing anywhere. I mean, the bottom line is good teams make their records better, look better away from home at different grounds, whatever it is, and they're full of confidence.
Yeah, I think what you find when you're a good team and you're playing big games, you're after atmosphere. So if you go over to Adelaide, you get atmosphere. Yeah. So that's what you want when you're a good team. You want a challenge like Port Adelaide will be tonight.
Well, one man who hopes the atmosphere is Port Adelaide fans cheering for plenty of goals is, of course, the power coach, Ken Hinkley. He joins us now. Ken, it's been so impressive this week, the way you've been able to remain really calm and measured amongst all the pressure and chaos. I noticed you said you've been around footy a lifetime, so you've seen all this before. But as the game inches a bit closer, are you nervous now?
Yeah, we are, and that's the same in footy. You know the challenges that you have, and I know what the week's been about, and I know how disappointing we've had a start to the season, but we get an opportunity tonight to turn that around.
And Kenny, there is a late change. Mackenzie's out. What can you tell us about how that came about?
Yeah, he's got our tall defender curse at the moment. Anyone who's tall down back gets in a bit of trouble. We had Skinner do his ankle during the game last week. We had, luckily enough, we've got Tom Cleary back after 4 weeks, so 5 weeks. So we're very lucky that Tom's been back and available because we know Melbourne have got some real height in their front half. So we'll have to do everything we can to keep it from getting down there.
Ken, very simple question. It's been a tough start to the season. What's your biggest fear tonight?
Oh, no, fear is not something we probably talk about, Jace, too much. Our biggest want is for us to be a bit more like us consistently, and that's what it is. It's a want more than a fear, and we know how good our stuff can be, but clearly it hasn't been where it needs to be for the first 3 games. Yeah, look, we've been in a couple of games, but that doesn't cut it when you're 0-3. You need to win.
What in particular, Ken, have you drilled down on this week in particular to try and improve a facet of your game? Has there sort of been one key area that you really want to hone tonight?
Yeah, Joe, look, we've been spending some time on our defence over the last 2 or 3 weeks, not just this week. We've been letting goals get through too easily, and we're playing a side like Melbourne, who are the intercept kings. So if we're not right on with our defensive game, they will take the ball back through us because they work so hard to get their intercepts going.
Kenny, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say when Port Adelaide are up and firing, they're one of the best teams in the competition to watch. How do you manage, I suppose, the emotions throughout this week, understanding what a big game it is, but also the games that have gone before you? How do you do that with a young group?
Yeah, look, we just take them back, Lou. We just take them back to what we do and how we play and tactically and what we go about and how we go about our business, because my risk for the players is they get distracted by too much, and we talk about that a little bit. Is what can you help tonight is that you bring your very best self, and that's what we talked about inside. If they can bring their individual best and then collectively put that together, it doesn't matter who we play and where we play. We're a really good, strong team when we get to that position. At the moment, we've got some boys who are just off a little bit in their game, a little bit of confidence down. So the best thing you can do is just stick together.
Kenny, I was very bullish about Port coming into the year, so I'm not thrilled about your start either. But the basis of my confidence was I thought when you look at Rosie, Butters and Dersma, they had injuries last year after such a good first year. I thought you get them back fit and firing, they might take the group to another level. Have I put too high an expectation on that 3, do you think?
No, I don't think so, Jace. I think all 3 boys are really capable and going to be high-quality AFL players for a long time. So I expect that they'd be feeling that same pressure themselves about not performing at the level they would like. Xavier's been injured and out of the side altogether this week. Zach's been reasonable and Connor's been a bit more down, I would say. So, we expect them boys, and we need those boys to be up along with the other players that we don't rely on 1 or 2 players. And I think that's been our secret over the last couple of years. We've been a pretty even and consistent team.
Well, Kenny, good luck tonight. We love watching your boys when you're up and flying, so hopefully that's the case this evening.
hopefully they give you something to be happy about tonight.
Good luck,
Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks.
Oh, he did look a little nervous, didn't he?
You know,
hard to keep still.
He handles it well, though.
Yes.
I mean, he knows that they blow smoke up their backsides when they're going really, really well. So you've got to take the heavy stuff when you're not playing well, and they're not playing well.
And they know they are a side that can get quite emotive. They are a team that when they know there is a big game, they do lift. We've seen it for a number of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ken's gone into the kit bag tonight, just pulled something out for this group. They know how big of an occasion this is. Thursday night football, the whole footy world's watching them, backs against the wall. I wouldn't be surprised, like the boys have said, they're going to come out firing early.
Our warm-ups tonight, thanks to McCain, Jord, the D's. They're playing like the Harlem Globetrotters at the moment. Nothing too much is challenging them. Their contested ball work has been out of this world.
Yeah, it has. I mean, a lot of their game is in good order, but certainly there's some stuff that they would have looked at last week. They said that they need to hone in on, but it's a big part of their game. You look at the names around that ball, and they're A-graders across the board, and you've got a young up-and-coming ruckman in Luke Jackson that also participates in that area of the ground. So they're in the right spot because they're not playing their absolute best. But there's certain parts of the game that are going really well. So they go to Porto, they get a chance, and the one thing that I mentioned before, they get atmosphere, which is what you want when you're a good team.
Well, Simon Goodwin joins us from Adelaide Oval tonight. He's going to have to put up with whatever atmosphere the locals throw at you. Goody, how are you going to keep this group sharp and focused week on week? You've been able to meet each challenge so far, but each week you've got to get them back up again as coach.
Yeah, look, it's important, Sarah. You know, we come to Adelaide Oval, you walk in here and the environment and the atmosphere is huge, and, you know, these are the type of games you want to play, and they're going to be ferocious, contest-based games, going to feel like a final, and this is where you really want to thrive.
Goody, we know you hit some enormous peaks as a team last year. You've started the season strongly, but how do you see the D's travelling in terms of what percentage of their best do you think you're playing at?
Yeah, look, I think our defence is in good shape and our turnover game's in really good order, but, you know, we can still improve around stoppage, centre bounce, our ability to connect forward to centre. They're all things that really maximise your game, but the majority of the core basis of our game's in good shape, and that's really important to us and how we want to be seen.
Is it comfortable for you now, Simon, that maybe as a coach you can just sit back a little bit and the players can almost coach themselves out there? They know their game plan, they know how they play so well that you can sit back a little bit and let them work it out on the field, because it seems in the first 3 weeks that's been the case.
Yeah, look, we're really spoilt, Joey. You know, our leadership group's outstanding, you know, led by Goodwin, Jack Viney, you know, Stephen May, get Jake Lever back, and, you know, Christian Petrarch and Angus Brayshaw are really thriving in those roles. So those guys understand how we want to play, their ability to reset in games. You know, we've seen it 3 times already this year where we've been headed halfway through the third quarter and we've been able to respond. So our leadership group play a huge role, and that's what's really important in big games.
Goody, how pleased have you been with role acceptance? Petrarca gets the run with last week, plays a little bit more of a selfless role. Oliver pops up. It might be different tonight, but the acceptive nature in which they've gone about their business must be pleasing.
Yeah, it is, Lou. You know, we've spent a lot of time on that over the last 18 months, the guys' willingness to give to the team, and last week Christian was no different. You know, his ability to manipulate stoppage, give us an advantage and get the ball, especially early in the game in our half, was really important to us. And, you know, we recognise that, we celebrate those actions within our team, and guys just want to keep doing it.
Hey, Goody, over the first 3 weeks of the season, we've seen some free scoring in a number of the matches. Do you think that's a trend in the game or just a temporary phase?
Oh, I think it's always early in the season, Jace. You know, the teams generally attack more. They've got more speed on the game early in the season. Then we hit winter and wet, and the scoring dries up a little bit. But, you know, I think, you know, the rule changes have helped. You know, the stand mark, there's no doubt. And I think teams are stretching the ground a little bit more and creating a bit more midfield space. So it is making it harder to defend, and we are seeing a few more high scores.
Goody, thanks for joining us. It is a big challenge over there, despite the fact they're yet to win. It's going to be a pretty hostile environment, so good luck to you and the boys.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thanks for the support.
Good luck, Goody.
It's interesting that he mentioned how well the defence is travelling, and then you just bring in an All-Australian in Jake Lever, mind you. It's a nice luxury, Jace.
Well, that's what happens when you've got a strong list, doesn't it? You've got competition for spots. And the thing is, there'll be some good players that'll need to get back into this side that are sitting there going, whose spot am I going to take? Who's not playing well? Because if you get in there, the spot's yours to lose. So if you play well enough, and we were having this discussion about a couple of other positions on the ground, and you've got Ben Brown to come back in. I mean, if you're playing well, you stay in the team, don't you?
Yeah, and they're such a well-oiled machine. As we said, they know what they need to do. Whenever they're challenged, it's never a concern anymore. They just crank it up a gear, they regroup and they get back in shape. They're travelling beautifully at the moment. As we're saying, it's a bit of an awkward time for a team that know they're going to be a top 4 side. We just got to tick the wins off, don't you? But you don't want to be peaking too early. But at the same time, you can't be complacent and take teams like Port Adelaide for granted.
So that's what you want. You want competitions for spots. So Joel Smith goes out of the side through health and safety protocols. Lever comes in. You hope that the person who replaces you does well, but certainly you're worried about your spot. That's the best competition you can have, is internal competition for spots.
So when you were part of that all-conquering Hawthorn team that won 3 flags in a row, how did you get yourself up week in, week out? How did you guard against complacency or kind of just going through the motions?
It's funny, I think if you take yourself inside a football club, whether you're winning or losing, it's a pretty neutral environment. So you look back on that time and you go, God, we should have been going into games really confident. But the environment was designed to actually get you on edge when you came into every game, whether it be Gold Coast when they came into the competition, GWS, whatever it may have been, there was always a task at hand. So you never, ever felt comfortable with Clarko around, I can tell you right now.
Absolutely not. All right, we're going to go into the newsroom now where John Ralph is standing by. Ralphie, Ken Hinkley spoke about some of the Powers injury dramas. There's been a lot happening with them and their personnel.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable luck there. So Trent McKenzie, of course, played in round 1, hyperextended his knee, and it was felt at that stage he might have even torn his ACL. He played again in round 2 with some bone bruising, but clearly that has caught up with him. So at least Tom Cleary comes back as a recognised key position defender for Port Adelaide. But look, they are decimated down back. So for Melbourne, Ben Brown, he's out of the COVID protocols this morning. But instead of rushing him over, of course, with Sam Wiedemann in fantastic form last week, he will play in the VFL, Ben Brown, on the weekend. And look, it's just a great chance for Ben Brown to entrench his spot. So Melbourne is desperate to sign up Angus Brayshaw. They've got the money, they've got the salary cap space, they've got the offer there. But he's just not ready to sign yet. So why is that? He's playing half-back and playing a really crucial role. But he still believes that he can play as an inside midfielder, as he did in 2018 when he was third in the Brownlow medal. And, of course, he is a free agent there. There will be other offers out there for him. So 88% midfield in 2018, 0 centre bounces, of course, so far this year. He's even played some back pocket as well as half-back. So he's absolutely going to be open to some opposition raids. Now, clubs play a premium for free agents. Of course, he thinks he can play in that role. He's plug and play. Geordie, what's your advice for a bloke who, like yourself, is potentially being pushed out of the inside midfield slot?
I think be careful what you wish for. I think if you're in a successful side and you're playing some good football in a position that you don't necessarily think that's your number 1 position, I would accept that any day over playing in the midfield at a side that might not be going so well. So you're playing at a good side, you're playing in front of big crowds, and you're playing finals year on year, what looks like will be again this year. So I just think be careful what you wish for as a player. The grass isn't always greener. So role acceptance at any team is probably the most important thing.
Jace, what do you think? I think it's absolutely crazy to be potentially moving from a powerhouse club just for a positional thing. I mean, it's not like he's playing badly in the back line. He's absolutely smashing it.
I think Louis made a very, very good case for exactly what would probably be going through the mind of Angus Brayshaw, and they're the things that he's going to have to weigh up. He might get a great offer. And do you want to be playing as the gun inside mid at a team that's not winning as much as they're losing? I think sometimes the ability to reinvent yourself because the coach or the coaching groups come to you and said, this suits our team better if you can do this, I think it's a bigger feather in the cap than going somewhere and saying, well, I just want to play somewhere else. But, again, it's his decision to make, not ours.
It certainly is. Interesting story, though. Ralphie, some good news and some bad news in terms of some Port Adelaide players, key players, and when they might return.
Yeah, I can tell you there is some small good news, and it is that Aliir is a sneaky chance to play next week. Now, he's down to 2 to 3 weeks out without syndesmosis, but my understanding is that he's massively ahead of schedule. It is a 9-day break leading into a Carlton game, and so if it's not that week, it's the week after against the Eagles. Charlie Dixon had surgery yesterday to remove a little bit of cartilage in his, or a little bit of scar tissue rather, in his ankle. The club's saying 4 weeks until he runs again. Look, hasn't done much for a couple of months. It's probably a 6 to 8 weeker, I would suggest, even though they're saying 4 to 6. Robbie Gray was out of COVID isolation this morning. He, of course, was a close contact of his wife, and then he got COVID. And so the issue for Port Adelaide is that he came out and they realised that his knee's still not doing well after that medial ligament sprain. And so, look, that's the problem for clubs who have players in COVID. You can't even give them the best possible medical care. Now, so much speculation about Ken Hinkley. Port Adelaide has systematically reviewed everything from top to bottom down over the last couple of weeks. Kenny Hinkley being sacked isn't going to solve anything. As Chris Davies, the club's football boss, told me today, Ken has been able to create an environment over time that has seen players very willing to recommit to the club, droves of them over the summer. So Brett Montgomery has slotted into the midfield role there. Of course, a lot of talk about Jared Schofield and Michael Voss moving on. That's not really an issue. They really love Brett Montgomery, but the midfield is an issue. The Power thought they were going to secure Zach Merritt last year. Then he decided to stay at Essendon. And then, look, as you just said to Ken Hinkley, the likes of Dersma, Butters and Rosie, they were chosen as the inside midfielders from half-back flank. They either can't get a kick or they're out of the side. Even in their best years, Port were being opened up at times, just opened up like a sieve, and that has happened again in 2 or 3 of those games. And so this is on Ken Hinkley, the midfield, of course, and of course those failing mids. No time like tonight for Ken Hinkley to show us why he is the star coach that he is.
Nothing the coaches can do. It's only one man to cover himself in glory. He's coming back. And got there! The scenes at the Adelaide Oval.
Well, this is a game lost in the coach's box. Make no mistake about it.
Footy has a way of giving you a whack, and certainly did that again tonight.
Look across at the Port Adelaide players, and the despair in that camp is understandable.
Game should have been probably won, but we didn't execute. But that's just a fundamental thing.
The pressure that is now bringing, so 0-3 historically is a terrible place to be. Even more so than the numbers, they just aren't playing well.
Ken Hinkley has always struck me as a passionate man that he's great at driving excellence, demanding ultimate effort from his players. That's disappeared from the Port Adelaide group. At least from the outside, it appears that way. He carries the can for this. Where's the support for your team? You're 0-2, backs to the wall, you've dominated this game. It should have been over, it wasn't. Give them a chance to find a way to win the game. I thought it was really poor, and they've got a real challenge on their hands now.
And history says they are only a 3% chance of making the finals if they go 0-4 tonight. Boys, they need a power surge.
They certainly
do. You like that, Chief?
I do. No, they certainly do. And look, I think they can get that. I mean, Ken Hinkley spoke about their defence. They're really struggling defensively. Sometimes, Geordie, it's just rolling the sleeves up and playing with a level of desperation to defend. Sometimes it's just an effort thing. Like, there's a bit of structure to it. But if you really want to defend and really want to cause turnover and stop goals, you can take that to another level. And that's what I think Ken's got in his kit bag. I think he can get that out of the group tonight. Big Thursday night stage in front of a big crowd. I just want to see them just play with that fanatical pressure and defensive ability we know they're capable of.
You guys have already both used the expression backs to the wall. I thought it would have been backs to the wall last week. But I think sometimes when you think you're a good team, and they've been a good team, they've finished on top the last couple of years, haven't they, and been preliminary finalists, I think you just expect things to happen. And sometimes it's not until you get slapped around, pushed up against the wall and beaten up and you go, well, if we don't go out and make something happen, it's not just going to happen. So for me, it's kind of like they don't have to win tonight, but if we don't see something, then I would write them off. But I'm expecting to see something tonight.
And one player we need to see firing is Ollie Wines. He is our chemist warehouse player in focus. George, what have you made of his season so far? I mean, he's an Echuca boy, so I'm going to go into bat for him.
Oh, come on, Sarah.
30, 36 and 29 as a midfielder. They're still pretty good numbers.
They're disposals, Sarah. So we know the midfielders get a lot of disposals in the modern game. But
that must hurt to say.
It's going to be a tough task. Absolutely. He comes up against, I think, the best midfield in the competition. So he hasn't been a lone ranger. He's had support from Boak and he's had a little bit of support from Houston as well. So I think that's important. But tonight will be a mentally fatiguing game against the Melbourne Demons because if you relax for a minute, they'll cut you up. So I think even referring back to last week's game against Essendon played a good 3 quarters. They relaxed or they tried to take a few risks in the last quarter and Melbourne based their game off setting up for turnover. Ollie Wines got to have a huge game, but it can't be only Ollie Wines. Otherwise, they'll suffer another defeat.
So his disposals are okay, but when you look deeper, less clearance, a couple less clearances, 4 less contested possessions. So he's gone away a little bit from what his bread and butter is, getting in and under, feeding the ball out. He's had more uncontested possessions, but at the moment he's the worst kick in the AFL. So he's getting more on the outside. He's got to get back to rolling the sleeves up on the inside and getting it out to the likes of Butters and Rosie and Boak and these guys and allow them to do what they do best. So I want to see him get back to the trenches tonight.
The other thing we've got to remember is we're comparing last year to this year. It was a Brownlow year last year. I mean, he went berserk and he was up here. So it's hard to live up to to that level all the time. But there's no doubt he's a little bit down on what we can see from him.
So we've spoken about how they need to win it in close. How crucial will the stoppage be to Port getting on top tonight?
Well, when we're trying to find a way how Port Adelaide can beat Melbourne, it's going to be very hard on the turnover game. We know Melbourne have got such a good turnover game, but maybe there's an opportunity from stoppage, because last week, and you don't want to rely on stoppage, but there's got to be an opportunity. And last week they kicked 60 points, Port Adelaide, from stoppage against Adelaide. And when you look at Melbourne, probably the one area of Melbourne's game at the moment, they are just giving teams a look is in the clearances. So they're 13th for clearance differential. They're allowing teams to score from stoppage. And we know they give you an extra player if you want to take it. So whether Port Adelaide tonight decide to bring up an extra player and then try and use the hands and take out Lever and May and give themselves an opportunity, that might be their best look at beating Melbourne tonight.
That's the challenge. So you bring a player up, you have to use handball. So I think watching Port Adelaide, a lot of their stuff is in and under pressure. So if you're going to bring a spare player up, I wouldn't put them necessarily inside the contest. I'd try and sit them on the periphery. So when you do get Ollie Wines to get that clearance, you know you've got outside run and space, so you can actually carry the ball a little bit further and bypass either a May or a Lever.
Is that your plan A or your plan B? Because what you do know is by doing it, you're giving Melbourne what they want. And that's that spare behind the ball that they set up so well for, and then they can rebound and score.
I mean, that is the challenge, right? Because you come up against an A-grade midfielder. Do you want to play the territory game, send someone up and get field position and try and hope that you can defend from that part of the ground? Or do you go, let's back our midfielders in, because they've got quality midfielders, and then we go 6-6-6 in the forward line? I always think the best way to start is back yourself in, give yourself 6 forwards, give yourself 6 defenders and see how you go, because you don't know. And then if you need to, you can fix holes where they appear.
I've got another good reason why Ollie Wines wants to win tonight. He wants to beat a couple of his old childhood friends in Jack Viney and Clayton Oliver. A couple of boys from our hometown in Clayton Oliver, and we'll claim Jack Viney because you guys played footy up there for a while. It must have made you a bit jealous seeing the local boys experiencing the ultimate.
Yeah, definitely. As happy for them as I am, I'm still incredibly jealous, and seeing their celebrations and reaching that ultimate success, it reignites the flame inside me, and I want to be the one to beat them in the grand final and take the ultimate. So I'm so happy for those guys. I've been a part of both of their journeys growing up as kids back home, and to see them reach the ultimate is really special, but I want one for myself.
That interview is Tuesday, 8:30. Jason, you'll be watching. Set it in your phone. Face to face.
Absolutely, the Sarah Jones hour. I never miss it. I never miss it, Sarah. Don't worry about that. There's the D's team. It's a luxury when you can bring in Jake Lever, isn't it? I mean, Joel Smith, we know he's a tremendous athlete, and he's making every post win when he gets the opportunity. But this is the great thing about them. They've pretty much got a full list to pick from. And you just know that the players want to hang on to their spots because there are people after them.
They've probably got 30 to 32 players who could slot into any other starting 18 from any other side. But just on that Ollie Wines stuff, that's also what motivates other players as well, is seeing teammates or childhood friends do well. I mean, I'm sure when Ollie won the Brownlow medal, there would have been a little bit of jealousy from Viney and Oliver. So now the shoe was on the other foot, so that's a motivating factor. But it's good to see Jack, I suppose, injury-free. He's been able to get pre-season under his belt, and the rewards were last year. But you're right, Joel Smith goes out, playing quite well. Jake Lever comes in, so there's no reprieve.
Make sure you're watching on Tuesday night.
I'm like Jason, I always tune in.
I get motivated by Sarah. I mean, I see you dominating, and that gives me something to aim for, Sarah. So I'm tuned in, don't worry about that.
I'm going to dominate this straight to the break now. Welcome back to Thursday Night Footy on Fox's the Under Pressure Power run out onto Adelaide Oval, and Lee Montagna, if they're to win tonight, they need to do one simple thing well, and that's kick the goal.
Yeah, they do. Their accuracy's been the worst in the competition. The opposition's been the best, but I look at that back six. They need to stand up. No McKenzie, they're a little bit light on down there. Cleary and Jonas are going to have to carry a big load. Ryan Burton might have to play as the third tall. So I'm going to look at the defenders and see if they can hang in there and just repel a few of those Melbourne entries.
George, the D's contest work has been amazing all season, but their turnover game with thanks to zero is what you're going to have a look at, because that also has been wonderful.
Yeah, 76 points from turnover last week and in a total of 99. So that's the challenge for Port Adelaide tonight, is to not get lured into going quickly. So this was at a point in the game where they needed to go quick. you've got to try and take a mark to allow your numbers to really catch up. So they go quick, the ball is in flow, you've got no other decision but to put it forward. You see there, it's a 4v2 against Melbourne, and because they set up for the turnover, they access the corridor better than any side in the competition. They will hurt you the other way. So that's why it's a great challenge tonight to Port Adelaide. At times you're allowed to go quick, but you've got to make sure you've got forwards there to compete because their defence sets up so well on the rebound.
So true. All right, who's going to own Thursday night, Jason? It's our big comp we've got going on Thursday night.
It is.
You're leading.
And I'm throwing up Ken Hinkley.
Ooh.
Now, I'm not declaring a Port victory, but I'm thinking this is going to be... He might be able to stage an upset, but I think they're going to have a real red, honest go at Melbourne, and I think Port's going to stand up tonight, win, lose or draw.
Gee, that's pretty generic.
How do we judge you, though?
So if Port Adelaide get close, you're going to claim that Ken Hinkley owns the night?
What's the line? We've seen what the odds are. Everyone expects Melbourne to just go there and roll over the top of them. I think they might get a bit of a shock.
Gee, that's generic. Sorry.
So generic.
Sarah, I've tried to narrow it down a little bit more.
This will be good.
No.
Come on, Einstein, what have we got?
Jake Lever. I think Jake Lever's going to own it. Back into the side tonight. He was the #1 intercept player last season. I think he'll come straight into the side, pick up where he left off. He'll just pick it off all night, and he'll be the star of the show.
Of course he will, because he's loose down back.
Yeah, and he will own the night.
No,
Jake Lever, straight back in.
I'll go out on a limb as well, like Joey just did there. So I'll go Luke Jackson. I just think because they're small in their defence, so they've only got Cleary and Jonas, Luke Jackson will just float down, kick a few goals. He'll probably kick half a dozen tonight.
Oh, that is a big call.
What about you, Sarah?
I'm still getting over the shock of Geordie's call. I'm going Simon Goodwin because I need to go the opposite to you. I'm in a head-to-head.
Simon Goodwin! So if Melbourne win, is that it? That's enough?
Yep.
It's really
head-to-head battle with Chief. We're winning.
If Port get flogged, I've got egg on my face. But you just go, well, favourites, they'll win. You pick him, you get 3 votes.
Loves to win,
Can't help being
You're very competitive. Very competitive young lady.
We've had to sideline David King just to keep him out of this for a little bit. Forwards and talking about goals, which of course has been a problem for Port Adelaide. Todd Marshall, 5 goals last week, a career high. And then on the other side, we've got Melbourne and Sammy Wiedemann, who kicked 4 goals, which was his career best on his return. So 2 forwards that we're going to have a really big eye on tonight.
They are. Marshall's a little younger. He's been developing at times. He's looked like he's going to take the next step without doing it. But he is an important player for them because he's got good hands. He can take a mark and he's normally a pretty good shot for goal. Sam Wiedemann's a really interesting discussion because he's been in and out of this team for a number of years and he hasn't actually been able to nail down the spot. And the fact that they went out and got Ben Brown tells you something about his security in terms of a position in the side. So he has to make every post a winner. It was good to see him do it last week. But if you're a Melbourne supporter, you want to see Sam Wiedemann do it 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row where he's kicking 2 or 3 goals and really having a presence.
Yeah, if I'm Sam Wiedemann, I'm thinking if I play well again tonight, knowing that Ben Brown could possibly come in, it's probably Tom McDonald that needs to perform. He's been a little bit down on form over the course of the year so far, but when you get your opportunity, he took it with both hands last week.
Yeah, and we saw Charlie Dixon's going to be out for even longer now. So this is a real opportunity for Georgiades and Marshall to own the forward line. They have to take ownership of it now. They're the two big focal points down there. So they have to really step up, not just for tonight, but for a big part of the season.
But if they're going to own that forward 50, they're going to rely heavily on the right sort of distribution of the ball coming forward. If they just bomb it in, they'll get carved up by the Melbourne defence.
It is the hottest question we ask every week. Do you tag Christian Petrarca?
Certainly got to put some work into him. We saw last week, Andy McGrath, when he did that, was able to nullify Petrarca. I mean, if you do play someone on an opponent, they don't run around and get 40 generally. So I think they're going to have to put some work into him. Trent Dumont's come into the side for Trent McKenzie. So whether they send him to a Christian Petrarca, a big body, mature player that can handle it, Will and Drew, we know, can do that as well. I think you've got to put some level of work into those midfielders, Geordie.
And such a tough task because who do you go to? And then understanding that Petrarca's being tagged a fair bit this year. He understands what role to play when he is tagged, so more of a sacrificial role, and then Oliver gets on top. So it's one of those things. McKenzie out, they've brought in a player that's not like for like, so maybe he is that runway.
Yeah.
Enormous pressure on the Power and their players, an expectation that they were going to have a massive year. It hasn't gone to plan, Jason. This has got to be a line in the sand moment. As you said, if they don't win, they at least need to show something.
Yeah, it's almost their last roll of the dice as far as season 2022 goes, because what will happen is if they put in a meek performance tonight, they won't get spared by the Adelaide media. I mean, it will ratchet up a gear or two, and they'll be calling for heads left, right and centre. So they're their own worst enemies if they put in a timid display. I just can't imagine them, after what's happened over the first 3 weeks, going out there and not being physical and ready to attack the best team in the competition.
Nothing better as a player, Sarah, running out to the first bounce. Whether you're at home team or the opposition, it's always a special moment at Adelaide Oval when Port Adelaide are at home.